Hello everyone. If you enjoy my videos, please consider subscribing and giving a thumbs up. Your support is my motivation to keep creating content. Thank you all. And now let's dive into the main content.
The beautiful killer the sun had already risen high in the sky, but the little squirrels were still fast asleep at home. Their mother, who had gone out early in the morning to gather food, rushed back home and shouted loudly at her sleeping babies. "Wake up, darlings. Grandpa Pine has caught the pine moss disease. You need to go help him." The little squirrels, rubbing their still closed eyes, jumped out of bed and asked suspiciously, "What is pine moss disease?" Grandpa Pine is covered with pine moss. The moss wraps around him like a thick spider web, suffocating him. I fear he's in danger and growing weaker by the moment. Hurry up and help him bite off that moss. "Quick, you go ahead, I'll join you after I tidy up," their mother said urgently. Without hesitation, the little squirrels dashed towards the old pine tree, waving their tiny fists and gritting their teeth, saying, "That moss is so bad. We'll bite it to pieces and save Grandpa Pine from this terrible illness." But when they arrived at Grandpa Pine's side, the little squirrels couldn't find the menacing, evil moss they had imagined. They circled the pine tree several times but still couldn't locate it. By this time, the old pine tree had been tormented by the moss to the point of exhaustion. He could only breathe heavily with his eyes closed, unable to respond to the squirrels' calls. The little squirrels thought Grandpa Pine was just sleeping and, apart from his labored breathing, they didn't notice anything else wrong. Their initial anger quickly dissipated, and they began to admire the old pine tree instead. "Look, we haven't seen him in a few days, and now Grandpa Pine's branches are covered in beards," said one of the little squirrels as he gently stroked these beards. "No, those aren't beards," another squirrel, standing a bit farther away, argued while squinting and admiring the sight. "That's green gauze fluttering in the wind. Someone must have dressed Grandpa Pine up beautifully with this soft green gauze." Hearing the squirrels' debate, the old pine tree understood their confusion. They were young and naive, unable to recognize the true nature of the evil moss. Gathering all his strength, he spoke haltingly, "No, it's not my beard, nor is it green gauze. They are the evil moss." After a long pause to catch his breath, the old pine tree continued, "It's the moss that's depriving me of sunlight, making it hard for me to breathe. Hurry, help me. Remove it from my body quickly." The old pine tree's strained words left the little squirrels astonished. They asked doubtfully, "Grandpa Pine, could you be mistaken? How could such beautiful moss harm you?" "You're the ones mistaken. While they may look beautiful on the outside, they're rotten to the core. Why else would people call them the beautiful executioner?" The old pine tree paused for breath, noticing the squirrels were still staring at him in confusion. He urged them again, "If you delay any longer, it won't be long before I lose all my leaves from lack of nourishment and wither away. We'll save you." The little squirrels no longer hesitated. They quickly climbed onto the pine tree's trunk and branches, biting off the moss one strand at a time. Once the moss was bitten off, it fell to the ground in heaps, gasping in despair, waiting for death under the scorching sun. Freed from the moss's suffocating grip, the old pine tree stretched his limbs and took a few deep breaths, feeling completely refreshed. The little squirrels, though drenched in sweat from the intense battle, were so filled with the joy of victory that they forgot all about their fatigue and thirst. "You must be exhausted. Have something to eat," Grandpa Pine said, offering them large, thin-shelled pine nuts. "It's my treat to reward you." "Thank you, Grandpa," the little squirrel said shyly. "Oh, come now, no need for thanks. You saved my life, didn't I also not say thank you to you? Eat up," Grandpa Pine said, then peacefully closed his eyes and drifted into a comfortable sleep. With so many large pine nuts before them, the little squirrels suddenly realized they hadn't had breakfast yet. and their stomachs started growling, urging them to eat. But just as they were about to sit down and devour the feast, they noticed a beautiful one-legged round table under the big pine tree. The bright red tabletop was adorned with many yellow and white spots, and the straight table leg was wrapped in a thick, large apron, making it look very charming. Even more conveniently, there were several matching round stools placed around the table, as if someone had prepared a banquet setting just for the little heroes. The squirrels were delighted. With such a beautiful table and chairs and such a lavish meal, it really feels like a fancy restaurant. How wonderful! They eagerly placed the large, plump pine nuts on the table, completely ignoring the warm, sticky liquid on its surface. The feast began. The little squirrels ate the pine nuts, which were covered in the table's sticky liquid, chatting and laughing as they did. Suddenly, one squirrel began to shiver uncontrollably, his teeth chattering loudly. Before the others could figure out what was happening, they too started shivering one after another. After a while, they all began to dance involuntarily. As the squirrels danced in a dizzying whirl, their mother arrived. Seeing her baby's strange behavior and then noticing the pine nuts on the round table, she immediately understood. She cried out in alarm, "How could you place the pine nuts on the Amanita mushroom? This Amanita mushroom is highly poisonous. What are we going to do?" The squirrel mother's panicked cries woke the old pine tree. When he opened his eyes and saw what was happening, he was stunned. He then regrettably slapped his head, saying, "It's all my fault. I should have warned them not to go near those poisonous mushrooms. Amanita mushrooms are also known as death caps. I'm getting more forgetful with age." However, being much older, the old pine tree quickly regained his composure. He said to the panicked squirrel mother, "Don't worry just yet, take them to the hospital immediately, there might still be time." The old pine tree's words reminded the mother, who quickly took her little squirrels to the hospital. As the squirrels disappeared into the distance, the old pine tree shook his head with mixed feelings and said, These poisonous things are truly dreadful. They all dress themselves up so beautifully, and the more beautiful they are, the more easily they lure you into harm's way. They are impossible to guard against."